Oh, I'll ask my friend. Well, thank you very much. We have to have the name, the recording in progress voice, and that's a contest we're holding right now. So by the end of the night, we need a name. Welcome, Joy, who you were with us this afternoon for meditation. All the way, Joy wins, by the way, because Joy is in Anchorage, no, you're not in Anchorage. You're at Fairbanks, Alaska. So she wins. And if Joy ever shows up for Shabbos morning, you're going to get a special prize in the mail. And we have a new friend. Is it Chris? Hi, Chris. Welcome. Unmute yourself for a moment.
Hello there.
Where are you joining us from?
Washington, D.C. Isn't everyone from Washington, D.C.?
Yeah, me. Where do you
I'm
live?
from Washington, D.C.
And Mel, too. Where are you? What neighborhood?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Friendship Heights, very close to you.
Oh, wait. Have we ever met before?
We met outside the flowers on.
Oh, it says Chris Gray. But
Yes, that's right.
so is that, I thought your name was
My husband was Edgar Kahn. That's right. And
Yes, no, of course I know who you are. Well, welcome. What a joy.
well,
And
with a little jog of memory, we met just that one time. So
yes, I passed by your house today. It's still looking great.
thank you.
Scott, welcome. It's always Shabbos when you and I are together. Gail, welcome. Susan, welcome. And Stephen, welcome as well. And Latka probably will make hopefully an appearance this evening. And I see Liz hovering in the background somewhere. So you probably know from read. Hi, Liz, Elizabeth, and Dan is here, and Judy is popping in. A lot of hellos. So you know what the theme is tonight, which is a follow-up from Shavuot. The question this evening is, what did we hear at Sinai? And we're going to get some traditional commentary that might be surprising to you about what we heard and what we might not have heard. Of course, we're talking about the 10 Commandments, which is not what they're known by in Hebrew. Anybody? What's it in Hebrew?
10 words.
Right.
Ibrayot.
Aseret Devarot or Devarim, which we're going to come upon that understanding of it in a couple of minutes. So the 7 utterances, not the 10 utterances, not the 10 commandments, which and the utterances might sit better for you than the idea of being commanded in our modern minds. So we're going to be concentrating on that. Please, as always, if you have any questions or comments, raise your hand virtually or just wave, gesticulate with a lot of arms waving in the Zoom room to me at the same time. And this is going to be a deep dive. So again, if there's something either you don't understand or something that occurs to you, Dan Glazer, I am counting on you to challenge me in the world of Bria. When you get the things on the intellectual side that you just don't get. Okay, so what was given at Sinai? Let's go to the videotape, Warner Wolf. So here we have, Moshe, he's climbing up the mountain. He's got his staff in hand, that famous staff. And I just put it there because I thought that's a lovely, lovely illustration. And underneath there are the 10 Aseret Hadibrot, the 10 utterances that I'm sure many of you have seen. If you go into a synagogue, often they are on what looks like the 2 tablets, Shnei Luchot, above the ark, and are written in Hebrew or in kind of like abbreviated Hebrew to represent these 10 things. So what are these 10 things? Somebody, I need a volunteer here to read from the left side down and then the right side down. Anybody? Go ahead, Deborah.
I am the Lord your God. No idolatry. Do not take his name in vain. Honor the Sabbath. Honor your father and mother. Do not murder. No adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Do not covet.
Okay, so clearly I didn't look close enough at this nice little cartoon because you know me, I tried to stay away from gendered language. So do not take his name in vain. Next time, I promise it will not read that. So let's now look at what it says, what we just read in both Hebrew and English. And I apologize because I forgot to increase the font for the Hebrew. So I need, Deborah, would you please read the English and I will, oh, I didn't complete it. Okay, that's great. All right, so this is an incomplete list. I don't have have it in front of me. So so we'll just read, unless anybody can pull it up really quickly, what the third, fourth, and fifth things are.
Would you like someone to do that?
If you could do that, Scott, I would be forever and ever indebted
Or
to
it could be the 7 utterances.
you. Mark down from 10. It's
Yeah. Well, it's after Shavuot. Isn't it a deal now?
I thought I saw that there were 15, and one of the tablets actually broke.
Okay, Mel Brooks
Yeah.
speaking there.
Okay, I got him.
Okay, thanks, Scott. So let's start from the beginning. I am Yud He Vav He, your God. Anochi Adonai Elohecha. Anochi Yud He Vav He Elohecha. Yud He Vav He, of course, being the name Hashem. And we're going to be looking at this word Anochi in a little more depth as an acronym, which I think I might have mentioned on, when was that? My Saturday night teaching, for those of you there for Shavuot. Joy, you were there. All right, the second thing is, Deborah?
No idolatry.
Lo yeh lecha Elohim achirim. So do not have any other gods before you. This, by the way, is the most often repeated lo ta'aseh, negative mitzvah in all of Torah. What this not to do is do not have idols. And of course, we can spend a whole night and much longer on what the heck this means, because it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, a sculpted image or what Abraham, according to the Midrash, broke in his father's idol shop. All right, it could mean other things. All right, what's number 3? Read it in English, and Scott will help us out in the Hebrew.
Do not take God's name in vain.
Lo tisad Shem Yud He Vav He.
Okay.
Yeah, Lashav. Elohecha Lashav.
Yeah, that's plenty. Lashav. Okay, third one, Deborah. Fourth one, I mean.
Honor the Sabbath.
Zachor et Yom HaShabbat.
Right. So,
V'kadsho.
right. Zachor et Yom HaShabbat v'kadsho. Of course, in Deuteronomy, it's going to say shamor, to guard the Sabbath, and so that's why in Visham we have Vishamor v'Zachor, and the Midrash is that divinity can speak out of both sides of God's mouth, or better said, could imitate Edith Piaf by being able to sing 2 notes at the same time. All right. Susan Freiband, it looks like you know what I'm talking about. All righty, number 5.
Kabed et avicha. Oh, you first, sorry.
Honor your father and mother.
Which is
Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha.
Kaved avicha ve'ad imecha. So your father and your mother, this may be the most difficult for some of us who had difficult, not me, thank God, difficult relationship with our parents, but remember that we refer to divinity often as Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, or Avinu V'Shabbat our Father who's in heaven. I am in the midst of watching this incredible adaptation of John Krakauer's book, Under the Banner of Heaven. Has anybody seen it? It's about the Mormon world and a murder that takes place in Utah. And it's just filled with the Mormons in the script, and how they refer to God as Heavenly Father all of the time, maybe more than I hear, Orthodox Jews saying Hashem. But in any case, there we go. Honor your father and your mother, and then that gets flipped also later on in the Torah. The 6th one, Deborah.
Do not murder.
Scott? Oh, well, I've got it there. Go ahead, Scott. Lo what?
Lo tirtzach.
Lo tirtzach. Deborah?
Wait, I only see Scott right now. I can't see the thing.
And
Victor.
do not commit adultery.
Okay,
And that is lo tinaf.
Right. And then do not steal. There should be a lo there, lo tingov.
Lo tignov, not
Tignov, right? Tignov, listen to the word tignov. You hear the word ganef in there, you know, in Yiddish. He's a ganef, you know, he's a thief. So it's the same root. Lignov, tignov.
not bear false witness.
Lo ta'aneh v'ra'acha ed sheker.
Bereyecha, so your neighbor, like v'ahavta reyecha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. And last but not least, finishing off Letterman's top 10,
Do not covet.
Lo tachmod. And you skipped right ahead to eshet.
I did. You're. I somehow I totally messed up my pasting and my copy and pasting. Okay, do tachmo. Do not covet. Okay, but let's move on from this page because this page is only getting me in trouble. So you may not know that in the Mishnah Tamid, okay, this goes back to temple days and a recording of what went on in temple days and the temple sacrifices. All right, and what the priests, the Kohanim, were busy doing along with their pals, the Leviim, all right, in the temple services. Originally, these Aseret HaDibrot, these 10 utterances, were chanted at the temple service as part of the liturgy. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. As part of the liturgy, as part of the temple service, predating the Shema. So before Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad was part of the temple service, the chanting of the 10 commandments were part of the service. And here's what it says in the Mishnah. Baruch Hu baracha echad, that you should recite a single blessing. You should bless Baruch Hu with a single blessing. V'hein Baruch Hu, and this Baruch Hu, this is what they should say. Karu aseret hadvarim. You should say these 10 things. So the fact that it was said as part of the temple service, this is a recording of that. Whether this was recorded after the fact or this is recorded before the fact, we don't really know, but I suspect that this is what the Kohanim were doing, and then the Mishnah records what the Kohanim were doing. The appointed priest who oversaw the lotteries in the temple, and I think that this refers to that not every priest had the same job every day, that there was a lottery that appointed certain of the priests to do certain things, whether they be the morning sacrifices, the afternoon, or other. Okay, Judy Young, welcome. Okay, but it says recite a single blessing of the blessings that accompany Shema. All right, so here, by the time this is written, the Shema is also being said, and is saying that there's another blessing. There's something else that should be said, and that is Aseret HaDevarim. However, the heretics said there aren't 613 commandments, there are only 10. So who are the heretics? They are the ones who are reading the text a little bit, much closer and coming up with their own understanding of it. And everything that they say runs against the practice of the time. And they are in not just competition, but they are in opposition to the priestly world. Okay. And they say, because, hey, they're saying, you're chanting these every morning. This must be the most important thing. Why do we need anything else? So, and there aren't 613 commandments. We just have to abide by these 10. All righty. And the members of the priestly watch recited a blessing. They recited the 10 commandments. And Rambam, Maimonides, Middle Ages, explains that the daily recital of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances, is because they are the most important part of our religion and the basis for everything. Well, Rambam could say whatever he wants to say, but he is a pretty good authority, right? Because it turns out that Rambam, he writes this Mishnah Torah which is much later than this Mishnah Torah, in order for us to understand how do we live by these things. I mean, what are we supposed to do? Right? You know, Rambam is answering that question in his Guide for the Perplexed. You know, you've got all of these things the Torah says, and the Mishnah, the Gemara, everything in the Talmud, but like, how are we supposed to live our lives in order to walk in God's ways, quote unquote? So again, the heretics say, there aren't 613 commandments, there are only 10. And so if you look in Brachot 12a, in that portion of the Talmud, it tells us, so the recitation of the 10 utterances of the 10 commandments, it was expunged from the daily prayers because of the heretics. And perhaps it was around the same time that prayer in the Shemona Esrei, it's not 18 blessings, actually 19. And I think that was the last one that was added because it was later than the 18, is all about the heretics, to get rid of them and protect us from us. And to keep them, it's like in Fiddler, right? Keep the heretics far away from us. Bless the heretics, keep them far away from us. Okay, continuing. Any questions? Comments?
I thought that theoretically the 10 commandments was for everybody in the world, and the 613 were for the Jews.
You're thinking about the Noahide laws, of which there are 7. Those apply to everybody, but these are specifically given to Bnei Yisrael. And the text, if you turn to the text in Shemot, in the book of Exodus, it specifically says that. And God spoke to Moses, and Moses, spoke to the people. So Moses downloads it, although we're gonna unpack that in a bit.
Okay.
But no, this is very particularistic. This was not meant for everybody, but anyone is free. Anyone is free to abide by these. They're pretty good. But remember, the Jews don't, the laws of the sacrifices, of which are many, of the mitzvot, after the second temple is destroyed, they don't go anymore. So it's really for nobody. But it is why some people who I don't know any personally, are feverishly working for the building of the third temple. But chas v'chalila, that should ever even get close. Mel Schnapper, question or comment?
Comment. I read a book decades ago called Why the Jews, by Telushkin and Prager, and they go through all the ways in which anti-Semitism has been de-Judaized, to explain it as the Jews being so different, being so poor, being so rich, being so assimilated, and they go through all these explanations. And the final chapter says, but the real cause of anti-Semitism is the 10 Commandments, that it's a moral code that humanity cannot live up to. So I just thought I'd introduce that aspect of the 10 Commandments.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. That's an interesting comment. I haven't read the book. One thing that reminds me of is that, dating even further back, somebody say the word for me.
Archaeologically.
Thank you, Scott Ryder. I once did that during high holiday services as a chazan. There was a word I couldn't get out of my mouth. And so I opened my hands up to the kahal. I said, would somebody say the word? Really did that. Yes, archaeologically, we know that there were what were called stele, S-T-E-L-E, I think it's spelled, that were large stones on which were carved out the rules of the peoples that lived in that area in Mesopotamia. So this whole concept of Luchot Habrit, the books of the covenant of the Luchot, they are the tablets of the covenant. That idea dates way further back than this all occurs. Alrighty, continuing. Let's take a look at the Anshe Knesset Gedolah, which was founded by Ezra in the year 520 or around there somewhere, BCE. This is the men of the Knesset Gedolah, of the big assembly. And it was these men who assembled the outline of the Siddur for us. And these are the guys who took the 10 commandments out of the prayers that were said at the temple. So don't think Siddur, think a prayer service that surrounded the sacrifices in the temple, right? There was no Siddur in those days. Most of our oral most of our articulation was Tehillim or Psalms that happened in temple days. But here we also learn that it was the 10 Commandments as well as Shema and the paragraphs that follow it. There were some other things as well. So we have the Anshe Knesset Gedolah to thank for the removal of the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 utterances or commandments, from those daily practices. All right, we're going to now delve into a little bit more playfulness, which, of course, is part of our tradition as well. According to Midrash, and I couldn't find what the specific Midrash was, if you count the letters of Aseret HaDibrot, of the 10 Commandments, you reach 620. What is 620? Midrash says it's 613 plus 7. Okay, what is 613, everybody? Go ahead, Mary Rita. What is it?
Number of mitzvot.
Right. It's the total number of positive plus negative mitzvot, the do's and don'ts. All right. And then in the Midrash, 620 is the sum of the 613 mitzvot and the 7 days of creation, which the Midrash basically makes the point that the world exists for the sake of Torah, right? And the 613. I would think another way to look at it is Torah as the blueprint for all of creation, that is then embedded into each of those 7 days, right? So inscribed in those 7 days. So we're going to play with numbers here for a little bit. Barbanel, these are all medieval commentaries in 15th century. He points out that all 613 could be placed as details, subcategories of the 10. In other words, we take those 10 that Scott and Deborah read before, and from those 10, we can extrapolate all the rest of the mitzvot. The 10, Barbanel continues, was that what all the people heard, right? And Moses, got the details. And as we know, God is in the details. The 10 were like headlining categories. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the 10 commandments. Right? And there's a big applause at the giant meetup at Sinai. And the people hear the 10, and Moshe, he gets the rest. All right. Some of you might know the Midrash that when divinity opened itself, God's self up to be revealed, the people were tossed 10 miles back by and that aleph, right? The aleph, which is silent, that's a mind blower. It's kind of like a koan, I think, that the sound of silence, with hats off to Simon and Garfunkel, of course, it blew the people away, literally, according to the Midrash. Let's take a look at what's on. Roxanne, did you have your hand up? Okay. Let's take a look at these 10 again. And we're going to get back to numbers. And notice something that commentators point out for us. On the right side of the tablets, now, if you're looking at the English, it's the left side, right? On the right side of the tablets, all of those mitzvot, all of those instructions are called what's known as bein adam v'makom, between a person and God. I am God. So no idolatry. Don't take my name in vain. Honor the Sabbath. Honor your father and mother. These are things that are between us and the Creator. On the left side, now you might ask, how is honor your father and mother? But I think I touched on that before of, that looking at as God, as both father and mother, especially Kabbalistically, but we're not going to go there. The left side, the mitzvot, between bein adam v'chaviro, between a person and the person and the neighbor. Do not murder, no adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not covet, right? So here we have a delineation that helps us kind of deep compartmentalize what's on either side of the luchot. The mitzvot that are bein adam v'makom, that makom means place. And makom is another name for divinity because God is in every makom, in every place. There's no place devoid of God's presence. Ein od bilvado. So we have here, again, the mitzvot kind of divided up for us. Continuing. Ramban, Nachmanides, 12th century. Now, Ramban, the difference sounds like Rambam, but these are both acronyms for their names. Ramban was more influenced by Jewish mysticism. Rambam was more of a intellectual thinker, but Rambam also is not given credit for thinking outside the box. But let's look at Ramban. He saw each of the 10 as pointing away from the 613 in specific ways. And this is on the piggybacking on what I mentioned before, that each of the commandments has basically, you push a button and you have subcategories, you have sublinks, right? Hyperlinks from each of those 10 commandments that lead you to others. So according to Ramban, Zachor et Shabbat, right, to keep or remember, or Shamor Shabbat, keep the Sabbath. That, because the Sabbath is a festival day, it's a holy day, that includes the laws of Shemitah and Yovel, the laws of the 7-year cycle, right, and 49 years, the year of the Jubilee, when the slaves are set free, when the land's laid to rest, and the Chagim. So Shabbat, being a time out of time, includes, according to Ramban, his ideas includes all the festival days, all of the things that we are according to time. Continuing with our numbers, Rabbeinu Bachya ben Asher, 14th century. Of the 10, notice that 3 are positive. Numbers 1, 4, and 5. Let's go back. Where are we here? There we go. 1, 4, and 5. I'm going to go back on mine too. I am the Lord your God. Honor the Sabbath. Honor your father and mother. That is positive. And all the rest, 3, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, and 7, 2 and 3. There are 7 that are negative. So 3 positive and 7 negative. And the positive one are representative of the lower number. Let me skip this here. Where are we? There we go. Oh, no, that's not it. Okay. Of the 248 positive commandments and the 355 no-nos, negative commandments, lo ta'aseh, are all included in the 7 negative. So again, we have the commentators, they're kind of trying to play with the idea that kolbo, everything is contained within these 10. And if you're creative enough, you can extrapolate what is contained in each of those 10. I'm sorry, I don't have the breakdown of what they understand those to be. Let's take a look at a little bit of Talmud. Oh, actually, before we do, any questions, comments, problems with this, issues, challenges, puzzlements, perplexities, any words you can't pronounce, like archaeological? Oh, Eliana.
Yes, so we recited in our services in ancient times, and maybe even not so ancient, but we recited the 10 commandments.
Right.
Then we stopped,
Mhm.
and we recited instead what we considered to be the foundation and core belief of Judaism, the Shema,
Right.
instead of what we had recited as the foundation and core belief. What caused the change? Why did we stop the recitation of the 10 commandments and either replace it or just stop well, I don't know if the Shema was said at the same
It was, yeah, it was said at the same time. I think I mentioned that. And there were other things too. The Amidah was said at a certain point, Shema and Vahaya Shemoah and Vayomer Adonai. Those are the paragraphs following the Shema. Emet v'yatziv was, if I'm remembering correctly, was said, which is the words following the last paragraph of the Shema. And so those were the things that were said. And the reason they were taken out again was because of the heretics who were taking a look. Oh, you got the 10 things in there. Those must be all we need to follow.
Well, when were the heretics in time?
The Knesset Anshe Gedola were, what did I say that?
BCE?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. They were 520 BCE. So we're talking, this is the Second Temple time.
Okay, I thought that we still said the 10 Commandments in Mishnah and Talmudic time. Did we not?
I don't know exact date when it was taken out. I'm going to give you that job to find out.
Okay.
Isn't that a very rabbinic answer? All right, so now we're going to turn to the Talmud, back to it. Where is it? Ah, not there. There we go. Okay, let's get the guy with the turban. Where'd he go? Ah, okay, sorry about that. All right, so we're looking at Rabbi Simlai. And this is an Agadah, a story that's told in Makot, in the Sechet Makot. Drash Rabbi Simlai. So he expounded, all right. Sheish ma'od v'shalosh esrei mitzvot nemru lo leMoshe. There were 613 mitzvot stated to Moshe in the Torah. And many of you probably know this teaching. 365 prohibitions corresponding to the number of days in the solar year, and the 248 positive mitzvot corresponding to the number of the person's limbs. I don't know how they got that number, and I don't know how far away that is from the actual scientific truth, but this is what the understanding was in those days. Mel. Unmute yourself, buddy. Or I'll get you.
I want to argue that this kind of numerology is what we called at the Hebrew Academy, we called it pilpul. Reductio ad absurdum, and just nitpicking and creating a numerological observation, which is invalid, I think.
Certainly, it is a worthy argument. What they're attempting to do, I believe, is they're trying to reconcile their. First of all, they're taking a close look at the text, and given the tool chest that they have at the time, they're playing with it, and they are they're doing their best to tease out further meaning from it, so that we can understand how to live with it. I mean, that's basically what the Talmud is. The conversations in there are all l'shem hashamayim. Even when there's a machloket l'shem hashamayim, where there's an argument, it's always for the sake of heaven and for the sake of understanding what we heard at Sinai or what we didn't hear at Sinai, but what we have as our inheritance, which is Torah. And then when right at the beginning of even our Torah service, we sing Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Marashat Kihilat Yisrael, that the Torah that was instructed to Moshe is our inheritance, right? So, they're playing around, Mel, with things, and they're again trying to tease out what are they're playing with things, and it's being recorded. It's being recorded forever by people whose jobs it was to listen to the rabbi's conversations and hold on to it so that it would later be recorded. And they had the ability, check this out, such was their memory, to edit if the rabbi came later on and said, well, I meant this and not that, or whatever. And remember too that these conversations are not happening in real time. They're happening over the course of hundreds of years. And so it's the responsibility of these recorders to remember the conversations, to add further conversation to it, and then for the rabbis to attempt to reconcile what the differences are so that they can hold it up to say, okay, here's something that we can either agree upon or that we're going to have to wait for Eliyahu Hanavi, his appearance until we understand. And there's an acronym for that, which is called Teku, that we'll wait until the Tisha B'Av, until Yahoo comes, and then he will reconcile all, what's that word? All differences, everything that seems to be running up against each other. All right, so we go to the next page. Let me see if I can get there. All right, so this is now we're going to break things down. In other words, we're going to see from different conversations how the rabbis try to attempt to figure out, well, can we reduce this? We have like when us cooks here, we create a reduction, right? That's really delicious. It's like the essence of, whatever it is. Sometimes we'll steep tea for a long time, right? And leave it in the pot, and we'll use the essence of the tea to make a cup of tea. So the rabbis in various places are going to be doing this. So Rabbi Hamnuna asked the question on the following verse. Moses commanded to us the Torah, an inheritance of the congregation of Jacob, right? Torah tziva lanu Moshe, morasha kehilat Yaakov. That's how we start all of our Torah services before breakthrough rooms. So he's breaking down this. Let's break it down. He's breaking down this sentence. So he says, what is this verse what that alludes to this, right? And he says the word Torah, in terms of its numerical value, was 611, the number of mitzvot that were received and taught by Moses, our teacher. In addition, there were 2 mitzvot. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods. The first of the 10 commandments that we heard from the mouth of the Almighty, for a total of 613. In other words, what he's trying to say is that we only heard the first 2. We only heard the first 2. Moses heard the rest. He passed it down to us. And then Na'aseh v'nishma, Moshe, whatever you say, we'll do. Because what you're saying is what God is saying we should do. So a little bit of mathematical trickery here. Rabbi Hamnuna using the numerical value of the word Torah, 611, and then adding the first 2 commandments. That's how he gets to 613. Here, I would totally agree with you, Mel. He seems to be playing a shell game. Right? Like we used to stop on the streets of New York City and watch those guys take people's money, right? Because only them knew where the ball was. Rabbi Simlai continued. So this is from the page before. King David came and established the 613 mitzvot upon 11 mitzvot. So he distills them down to 11. Okay, let me repeat that. Rabbi Simlai, in the Talmud, he looks at a psalm for David. I'm forgetting which psalm it is. But he notices that there are a lot of ways in which this psalm mentions that we should live our life. And so Reb Simlai says, this is the distillation that we've been looking for. All right, a psalm of David. O God, who shall sojourn in the tabernacle? Who shall dwell upon your sacred mountain? Here's the answer. If you can keep track, I did count 11. He who walks wholeheartedly, he who works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart, who has no slander upon his tongue, nor does evil to his neighbor, nor takes up reproach against his relative, in whose eyes a vile person is despised. And he honors those who fear the Lord. He takes an oath to his own detriment and changes not. He neither gives his money with interest, nor takes a bribe against the innocent. I must have lost a finger there because I counted 10, but there is 11. I counted 11 before. Yeah, thank you, Mary Rita. All right, good. You got 11. Thank you, Chana. So look at what he's doing. These various commentators are doing their best to help us understand, these 613 is too much. Right? I can't remember all of those. And as a matter of fact, now that there's no temple, we can't do the sacrifices. Please, somebody help me understand how I'm supposed to live my life. So now we're down to 11. Aha. So you know where I'm going with this, because if you can distill it down to 11, you could distill it down even further. And let's see. The prophet Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. He sums it up in 3. Higid lecha adam matov. Uma yuhdevave doresh mimcha. What does God expect of you? Ki masot mishpat, that you should do justly, mishpat, v'havat chesed, love mercy, hatzneah lechet im Elohecha, and walk humbly or modestly before your God, im Elohecha, or im with your God. Okay. Look at this. We're really get down to it. 613 down to 3. That's all right. I can deal with those 3. The word tzniah, you might recognize, some of you, tznius. A woman is to be modest, dress modestly. So the word tznius or tzniut shares the same root here as to walk humbly. Now, Amos in competition with, and by the way, I think it's wonderful that these prophets lived a long time ago, and Wikipedia was able to get illustrations of them that these guys they posed for these representations of them. I think this is fantastic. Amos in chapter 5 verse 4, he gets it down to 2. Kicho amar Hashem levet Yisrael dirshuni v'yichyu. Vachyu, seek me, right? Like a drush, inquire of me. V'chiyu, like l'chayot, to live, right? L'chaim. Seek me and live, right? As I understand it, when you are in relationship with me, that will animate you in alignment with my dream for you. My unique dream for you. That's my, hi Judy. That's my just sudden Torah. Okay. Let's go on. In Masechet Makot 24a, the gematria of Torah 611. So Moshe taught 611 according to the teaching. We did this before. We heard the first 2. The first, I am, Anochi. The first representing all positives, and the second, V'lo yeh lecha, you have no idols before you, all the prohibited. That represents all the prohibited commandments. So now, instead of the 10 commandments, the Aseret HaDibrot, each of the 10 containing all 613, now we have the first 2 containing 613. That the first one, which is a positive one, contains all the positive commandments in it. Just click on it and all the hyperlinks will come up. And then the second one, Lo yeh lecha, pesel, don't have any idols, images. That's the first negative commandment. All the ones that are prohibited are included in that one. So we're getting down to it. You can see the direction that we're headed, which is we're headed to Yichud. We're headed to Echad, Adonai Echad. We're headed to all of Torah being summed up in one word. Let's see if we actually go there. The Piasetzner Rebbe was the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto. His work was buried in large metal containers in underneath the streets of Warsaw and discovered after the war by people who went back, who knew him and had studied with him, been a member of his kahila. And all that where they looked had been destroyed. And they had to guess where he had buried them, and they found them. He's known as the Eish Kodesh, the Holy Fire, and that's the name of his most famous book, which is available in English. It's extraordinary. It is a drashot. They're teachings on every parsha for like 2.5 years, maybe 3 years. That if you know, and obviously we do, the background on which it was written, which is that they're in the ghetto and they know what's in store, it's extraordinary, his drashot that come out of that within that context. We see Torah through the lens of whatever it is we're living at this time, or whatever time it is. The Piaseczner Rebbe had an opportunity to escape. He didn't go. He didn't take advantage of that. He wanted to stay with his people. So this is part of his teaching for Shavuot in 1940. And he's riffing on the bracha, on the blessing for Torah study. Baruch atah Yud-Heh Vav-Heh Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Yah, source of all life, however you want to translate it, who has sanctified us through God's mitzvot and commanded us la'asok b'divrei Torah, to immerse ourselves, to busy ourselves in the words of Torah. In other words, who teaches, it's supposed to be say his people Torah. Right? La'asok b'divrei Torah. God commands us to study Torah, and thus will teach us, be our moreh, be our teacher of Torah. This leaps up at the Piaseczner Rebbe. God is teacher, he asks? Where did we get that idea? Right? Where did we get that idea that God is our teacher? When did it start? And his answer is at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai, which he calls the first Beit Midrash. The first Beit Midrash, the first house of study is at Sinai, because divinity basically is the teacher. We are God's students, and we hear. What we hear, we don't know, but we are the students. We are receiving, and that's going to come in a second. Midrash Tehillim, when God says do, we say yes. When God says don't, we say no. But here, Reb Zalman of blessed memory always used to refer to God downloading. I use that a lot too, because I got that from Zalman. That eternity out of love and out of yearning to be in relationship with us opens up and reveals God's self and God's yearning, as well as blueprint for the Torah of how to live our lives, and downloads to us in a moment of incredible, that I'll never forget. The very first time I experienced Reb Zalman was at my first Kala in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And it was at his major teaching in front of everybody on a night. And he asks us to put our hands on our thighs with our hands facing up in receptive mode, and that he is going to download his teachings to us. Now, obviously, he did not teach us everything he knew that night, but what he did was he breathed. He breathed, and we breathed with him. But this is not in alignment with what the Piaseczner is teaching us, because Piaseczner is teaching us that was not just a download, but a give and take, In other words, in order for there to be a Moshe, in order for there to be a Moses, there have to be a flock, right? In order for there to be, I'm blessed to say, Reb Mark, there has to be you. You know, there is no Moshe. There's no Minyan Oneg Shabbat without you, and I don't have an ear. And you can't be a teacher as well unless you have the ear of somebody who is in a receptive mode. So again, this is a give and take relationship. The Piaseczna Rebbe now looks to the Maharal of Prague, 16th century. And in picking up of the Maharal says, the Piaseczna says, and reiterates where I began, we don't know what we heard, but everyone agrees that we heard the kol shofar, the voice of the shofar, one sound. And the Baal Shem Tov, based on a line in Shir HaShirim, Nafshi yatsa b'daro, my soul went out from God's word. So whether that word was in the form of the sound of the shofar, or the silent aleph, or just Anochi, we don't know. But Nafshi yatsa b'daro, my soul went out from the word. That's my comment. The soul is the gift. Wow. That divinity is gifting us the soul of the universe. And so, what was it that we heard in the sound of the shofar? We really heard Anochi. This is the Piaseczna continuing. Vihi godel hit kashrut. It was a great a kesher, a connection, right? Beino, between Yitbarach, the Blessed One, HBO, the Holy Blessed One, or the Teacher of Teachers, and V'nei B'nei Yisrael ala Kabbalat HaTorah, and Israel in receiving Torah. There's a Michelangelo moment, right? In which eternity reaches out a hand. There's a space between it within which something happened, as Joseph Heller reminds us. And we are on the receiving end. And that's why Shavuot is known as Zman Matan Toratenu, the season of the giving of Torah. But pay attention to the word matan, with the root is what? Not notain, nun, taf, nun, which is a what?
Palindrome.
What is it?
Palindrome.
It's a palindrome. Nun, taf, nun. So the word to give, embedded in it, is to receive. So without a giver, the giver needs to have a receiver, right? The giver needs to have a receiver. What do we receive? What do we receive when we receive Torah? As on the last page, it's a soul connection. An essence to essence connection based upon a teaching in Masechet Shabbat on the word Anochi as a acronym. Ani nafshi ketavit yahavit. My soul that I have written and given to you. My soul I have written and given to you. The word Anochi, the very first word of Aseret HaDibrot, maybe that's what we heard. And maybe within that transmission, we are ensouled. We are inscribed in the same way that the Luchot HaBrit, the tablets are inscribed. We are engraved. with eternity within us. We receive the manifestation, the distillation of God's essence, and all we needed to hear was Anochi. I. The Zohar, it not just admits, but it states out flat blank. There's no grasping this at all. It's kind of like a kohen, right? You think you got it, but you're not going to figure it out here. Your left brain is only going to get jammed. Somehow we need to receive it on a higher plane with a higher understanding. Maybe receive it physically by seeing the thunder and hearing the lightning, by feeling it in the world of Yetzirah, in the synesthesia of that moment of hearing the sounds, of hearing the vision and seeing the sounds. Things kind of our wires get crossed in a way that doesn't allow us to wrap our heads around it. Elohai neshama shenatata bi. My God, the soul that you have given me is pure. Maybe this is the portal in which we can begin to relate to this in something we can use. Because when we say Elohai neshama shenatata bi, it's a statement of intimacy. My God, the soul that you gave me, it's pure. That's my God, just the first part, my God, the soul that you gave me. It doesn't get much more intimate than that. And if you think of our souls as a chip off the old block, with divinity being the block, right? Then we are forever part of that. And when we pass from this lifetime into wherever we go to, whatever Olam Haba, the world to come, is offering us, we return to our source. Kind of like maybe glom on, back on, to the block. Now, this is the genius of Hasidus, of Hasidut, of which we live and practice in the tradition of. Hasidut gently moves us away from trying to understand something that we can't, to experience something within that we can. And my note was, this is what we're working on together at Moshe. Reminding us, Reb Zalman said all the time, that Judaism is highly intellectualized and underexperienced, right? We get it here. And let's remember, too, that religions, like organized or disorganized, the prophets, have come from something that someone experienced and then tried to put it into words. That's something that someone experienced, and others, perhaps, tried to create rituals or come up with words that could allow us to point at the moon. Can we experience what they experienced? No, but we can experience what we experienced. And sometimes, if we're so blessed, touch the moon, right? Coming in for landing here. The giver gives to the receiver, and the receiver receives. And in turn, the receiver becomes the giver of Torah. As the sun lights the moon reflects back to the world. Pardes, the yeshiva in Jerusalem, their motto is find yourself in the text and find the text within you, right? And we do that all the time. I think that that's what our breakthrough rooms are all about, reflecting on the Torah, the words of Torah, what it has gifted us, and then looking within to see how it's reflected in our personal Torah. So look at the magic tonight. 1 becomes 613, and vice versa. Just the first word, Anochi, becomes all of Torah. Ein od milvado, there is nothing beside God. It's pretty absolute. Anochi is everything. The I amness is the isness of all. And we receive a soul inscription from it. I want to invite us into a meditation for 5 minutes. This meditation, I invite you to sit comfortably, calmly, and listen. To allow yourself to be at Sinai at that moment when the silent Aleph, or out of the silent Aleph, all was revealed, which is still resounding and reverberating today. So close your eyes, and I will read through the meditation and guide us along the way. Imagine that you are there, hearing Anochi and receiving all. Listen. Not a bird chirps. Listen. Not a fowl flew. Listen. Not an ox moved. Listen. Not an angel ascended. Listen. Not a seraph pronounced kadosh. Listen. Not a wave of the sea rolled. Listen, not a creature made a sound. Listen, all the universe was silent. You are there. You are there hearing Anochi, I am, receiving all. Notice your breath. Moving in perfect time with the universe within. And when you're ready, easily and gently allow your eyes to open. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. Yai lai rai, yai rai rai, yai lai rai rai rai. Yai lai rai rai rai, yai rai rai, yai rai rai rai. Thank you, everyone, for being together here with me and with each other this evening, giving me the space and the opportunity to teach and to receive, because Lilmod Ulalamed, the phrase is in Ahava Rabba Ahavtanu, the paragraph that precedes the Shema in a traditional Siddur. So both things are happening. When we teach, we learn. When we learn, we teach. I don't want to end without recognizing if any of you have a reflection that you'd like to share about the teaching or anything that came up for you this evening? You can take a few minutes to do that. Okay. Yes, Mary Rita.
I like the simplicity of getting down to two or one. That it all can be held in our hearts in one or two commandments. I love that. Or three. But there's something about that um, that really holds me, and that simplicity and that connection.
Yeah, you know, Rabbi Akiva felt the same way. And he said the most important thing is v'ahavta re'acha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself, is the essence of. And what did Rabbi Hillel say? What is hateful to you, do not do unto others. So there are more just different distillations that different people came up with. Maybe you'll come up with a different one, Mary Rita. Deborah.
I keep thinking about your silence song,
Hmm.
how it would fit here so well.
Hmm. For those of you who don't know what Deborah's alluding to, I had an experience where the universe downloaded words and music to me years and years ago. And it's this song called Silence. Dan?
Yes, thanks. I was also thinking about the Hillel and the Akiva distillation down to a single thing, and that almost sounds like the more secular humanist version of what you've been talking about, which is more experiencing the unity of everything, and from that everything else falls out of. But from the Akiva and the Hillel part, it's just how to live your life. And they're all good distillations. The one last thing, sorry, is that I'm reading this book. It's a Buddhist book about suffering, the end of suffering. And basically he's talking about letting go of everything except the oneness and the connectedness. And if you can do that, then everything falls into place. It almost, I don't know how much to say it. I don't really know much about Buddhist theory, but just distilling it down to first principle like that is important.
Thank you, Dan. Let's recall that the rest of Hillel's statement is after he says, right? What, Deborah, you're shaking your head. After he says that which is hateful to you, do not do unto others. Then he says,
The rest is commentary and goes.
the rest is right. The rest is commentary.
Right.
But he's not saying not to read the commentary. Okay, so I want to be mindful of time. So Mel and Hannah, if you can try to keep it as succinct as possible, I'd appreciate that.
Just a comment, and I forgot exactly who, but that all of Torah he could recite standing on one foot.
Yeah, that's Hillel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't say that. The proselyte comes to him and challenges him. You know, I'll convert if you could teach me. Well, first he goes to Shammai and he says, if you could teach me all over Torah standing on my foot, I'll convert. And Shammai hits him with a ruler, because he measures things. He's like a construction worker, or what do they call those guys who put other people to work? And then he goes to Hillel. He gets a lot more gentle response. Chana.
Yeah, thank you for the acronym for Anochi. Ever since Rabbi Wayne Dosick wrote his book, Anochi, the Real Name of God, I've used Anochi as my personal term for God. So That adds a little bit more meaning to it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Wayne is a very special guy.
Yeah.
All righty. So thank you, my friends. I'll see many of you, hopefully, if not all of you, Shabbos morning. This week, by the way, is Parshat Naso, in which we find Birkat Kohanim, that we use to serve as Klei Kodesh, as holy vessels to offer blessings to each other every Shabbat morning. And so we're going to unpack that this Shabbat and see who that you keep this in mind this Shabbat. About there being a giver and a receiver, right? Because that's part of that equation too. So it's always good to end with Reb Zalman. I sang a little bit of it a bit ago. So Sim Shalom Tova Vracha, bring peace, blessing, and goodness, and everything ends with Shalom, Shlemut, with wholeness. All is contained within.
Dona nobi pacem pacem Dona nobis pacem
Sing with them, Sim Shalom.
Sim Shalom Tova Uracha Sim Shalom Tova Uracha Harayom Harayom Shanti Om Om Shanti Om Shanti Om Assalamu alaikum Salam alaikum Salam alaikum alaikum.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.